Knowing how and what to practice over the summer can be really tough, especially when you're not actively participating in ensembles. Not to mention the fact that even finding the motivation sometimes to practice can be tough as well. So in this video, we're going to discuss several different strategies that you can apply right now to your practice over the summer. So let's get right into it. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Zachary Savinsky, and today I am joined by a fellow music educator who just happens to be my girlfriend, Leah Keller. Leah, how are you today?
Good. I'm doing good, Zachary. How are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, we get to do this video together.
Yes, that we haven't done one of those before, so
yeah,
we'll see how it goes. Please be patient with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Leah, we're going to be talking about practicing over the summer today, but just for the audience, what instrument do you play?
I play flute.
Okay.
As my primary instrument.
As your primary instrument, obviously as music education majors, we have to be able to play all of our instruments in the band and orchestra setting, as well as learning how to sing. But primarily, you're a flute player. I play percussion primarily, if you are just meeting me. So yeah, we're going to get to talking about how to practice over the summer, something that can be really hard to do. This video is kind of more targeted at those of you who are in school, whether that's high school, middle school, college. In general, practicing over the summer is a very difficult thing because we don't necessarily have the motivation to practice, would you say?
Yeah, I will be honest, I definitely took a couple weeks off. It's the middle of June right now, and school got out at the end of April, and I have not practiced as much as I probably should have, but I think that's okay. The summer is a good time to take time off, which I know you're going to get to later. But.
Yeah, we will mention that, but for right now, let's get started with our first strategy for practicing over the summer. And Leah, what is our first strategy?
Yeah, so the first strategy that I came up with when Zachary asked me about this was to practice your scales and arpeggios. And that sounds pretty boring, maybe a little bit to some of us.
It does to me.
Yeah. Now, I was actually, I forgot about this, but I was going to bring a book and I can tell you about it and you can link it in the description or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a book that my flute professor from Western, Dr. CV, that she teaches everyone our scales out of. And it's a specific pattern of scales that kind of, I won't explain it or anything, but it just makes scales more fun. And it's not just up and then down again. It truly, I learned to play musically through those scales. So yeah, I would say make these exercises musical, like make them fun, change up the tempo for sure. Because the reason we practice scales and arpeggios is because we want to get better at our technique, right? That's like the first thought.
For sure.
Okay. But it's also there to improve our breath support, our tone, primarily our tone really is what I've learned in the last few years. Tone, articulation, dynamics. Those are all the really important things that you can focus on during that fundamental time of the first beginning of your warm up. And honestly, yesterday when I played, I just played probably 15 minutes worth of random scales, and it was the easier ones. Like I played the minors or the majors, and then I played the minors right next to each other. But also get in the habit of maybe switching it up. So say if you're doing B flat major scale, if I was doing them right next to each other to kind of correlate in my brain that whatever major and minor hook up with each other, I would play the B flat major scale and then the G minor scale right next to each other. Or maybe I want to get better at just being able to pull those scales right out of my head. Then I would play a B flat major scale and then immediately jump right into maybe like a D minor scale or something. Something really random, like that is completely different.
Not utilizing the normal pattern that people usually go like circle of fifths or fourths or something like that.
Yeah. I found that really helps with my music theory knowledge. But in general, like as a musician and just as I'm at this point in my college, I feel like I need a little bit more of sustenance, something. I can't just keep going through the motions.
For sure. Yeah, we need to shake things up, and we need to be prepared for different situations. And I think doing what you mentioned is definitely a great tool. I would say also making sure you're using a metronome is very, very important. Obviously, we shouldn't be utilizing a metronome for performance purposes, but obviously for practice, it's a great tool. Would you say that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Using the metronome is important. I am not a person who has a very steady internal pulse. I know we've talked about that before, and that's really frustrating to me. So in those fundamental times of the scales, and the scales can be majors, minors, chromatic, and then arpeggios, majors, minors. I mean, anything you can think of. During that time, this is so important to just your overall musicianship, is to take that time fundamentally just to start your warm-ups, even with a metronome, and maybe ease off of it, because we don't always need it. Sometimes if you're focusing on your tone, maybe if that's the thing that you're practicing and trying to be more open in your oral cavity as a wind player, or maybe you're focusing on technique as a percussionist or as a string player or something like that, but you're focusing on tone, you don't need the metronome to focus on tone, because you're not practicing staying in time, right?
Sure. Yeah, it definitely depends on what you want the focus or your goal of your individual practice to be at that given time, which I know we've talked about that before on this channel, of what to focus on in your practice, when focusing on quality over quantity of your practice. And those are all very important strategies in order to do that, I would say.
Yeah, the big thing is just being intentional with what you're trying to get out of the time that you are spending. Like, work smarter, not harder. I think you would be the first person to say that. How many times have you said that to me? But that's basically it.
All right, we're going to be moving on to our second strategy now for how to practice over the summer, which is knowing when to practice. Obviously, we can talk about what to practice and all of those different types of things of what to do in your warm-up. But for some musicians, it's just a struggle of, well, how do I find the motivation in that day to practice? And I think it's very important that we prioritize our practice earlier in the day. If we don't prioritize practicing right away, we're going to be more apt to make plans or get busy later in the day or be more tired as we continue throughout the day. So right when you wake up, maybe obviously take some time to eat breakfast first or something like that. Most important meal of the day, right? But don't look at me like that.
I looked at the camera, not at you.
Oh, whatever.
The people want this comedy, Zachary.
Okay.
You gotta give it to them somehow. That was a good try.
Yeah, okay.
We'll see how the rest of this video goes. Okay. Try to throw a few more in there for you guys.
Okay. Anyways, it's important that we do it right away in the morning, I would say, just because it gets it out of the way right away. And then we are then able to use the rest of our day. We don't have to worry about practicing then. We don't have to worry about, oh, I got to learn this next part of my solo or something. You know, the summer a lot of the times can be used for working on technique, like we just talked about, or just learning fun repertoire, unless you're involved or in practicing, getting ready for things like marching band, or you're in community bands or something like that. But for sure, just taking the time, having the discipline to take the time in the morning specifically to practice will go a long way when you're trying to practice over the summer. But also, this next point I would have to say is even more crucial. And I know, Leah, you already mentioned it earlier. That's, don't be afraid to take time away from the practice room. You know, summer, yeah, it is an opportunity. You know, we have all this time. We're not necessarily actively preparing for things. Like, we don't have active performances, especially if we're in college or in high school. We're more so getting ready for things in the future. So not being afraid to just take a few days, take a week off. That's okay. I mean, that's what I think.
At least a few days.
At least.
I won't tell you how long I haven't practiced for.
Yeah, same here. But yeah, I think taking the time to take a vacation, going somewhere fun, doing something fun with your family, friends, that will help rejuvenate and help you reset for when you do come back to practicing.
I do want to say, not everyone can practice in the morning. Maybe you work in the morning. I mean, I am so not a morning person. Maybe it would work better to just find a time that is specific, that you have carved out for yourself, where there are no other distractions, no phones, no family members that are going to come barging in, or friends or roommates or anything. That the most important thing, I know I said this before, but is to carve out that intentional time and plan when you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, and what you're specifically going to be working on in that time. And that will just make your life a whole lot easier.
All right, we're going to be moving on now to strategy number 3. And Leah, what is that strategy?
Strategy number 3 is really important to me, and I struggled with this for a long time. I will suggest, when practicing over the summer, to find Repetoire. Oof.
Sounds like a dinosaur.
Repetoire.
Repetoire.
Some people call Repetoire. Find Repetoire that you enjoy playing. Maybe it's probably not just scales. Yeah,
definitely.
Okay. Well, if you take my advice from earlier, I honestly do think, like, I practiced scales the most yesterday because that was the thing that I had the most success playing. And you want to feel successful. You want to set yourself up for success. And that's why it's so important to find music that you enjoy playing. Yeah, it's good for the challenges, but the school year is there for the challenges. If you're in high school or college, you're probably at least playing in an ensemble and probably taking private lessons, or maybe you're doing solo and ensemble, or maybe even if it's just one solo piece or a chamber piece, you have that dedicated time where teachers or your fellow musicians have handed you something, or you have academically chosen something to study. The summer, we don't have anything like that unless you're taking a music specific class, or you have a job that requires you to perform, or you're involved in another ensemble. We're not studying academically during this time, which is actually really freeing. So there are some resources where we can find stuff like this. So if you're more interested in older music, anything that is in the public domain, there's a website called IMSLP, and that's kind of like college music student. I hope you know that. Because that's where we can get free copies of this music of composers who have died a long time ago, basically. Was that accurate?
Yeah, basically music that is in the public domain, which means the copyright has expired, which usually happens, I think it's 80 years.
I thought I was going to say 75 or something. It's something like that.
It's in that range after the composer has passed away. Then that music goes into the public domain, and it goes into the public domain if the copyright holder hasn't extended the copyright, which does happen to be most classical orchestral music.
So IMSLP, I think, is a great resource. If you are just looking for something that's free, that you just need some stuff to practice. You just need a little bit more challenge for your summer. And I mean, other band teachers, private lesson teachers, credible sources, don't just go to Google or anything. Other credible sources probably have compiled lists of what is specific to your instrument. And that is something that me and Zachary were both working on as like future music educators. But obviously, if I had that, I would share it. But I don't, because
we're working on it.
I'm not that old right now. Haven't been in school that long.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Well, actually have been in school a long time.
We're going into our final year.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. Well, have been in school.
Haven't been teaching for that.
We haven't been teaching, so we haven't had this experience that we've needed to figure out all of this good rep. So hopefully we'll learn more about that in the future. Hopefully you will too, but please reach out to people in your life that know of good sources to find this music. Don't just go and find something random. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I do actually. I think, you know, a lot of us, when we think of playing something fun, we don't necessarily think of old music by Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Dvorak, whatever. We don't normally think of that as being fun music to play. What we do normally think of being fun to play is pieces from movies or pop songs or you name it, like those types of things. We find those typically as being like the fun things that we get to play.
Yeah.
And I think there's actually a resource right here on YouTube that you can use to just play along. And that's going to music publishers such as Hal Leonard, Alfred, Arrangers Publishing Co. Those types of companies, they have YouTube channels where you can actually, they'll have the score to some of these pieces or just arrangements of movie scores. They'll have them on YouTube, and just the score will be like, you'll flip the pages as you go along with the video, and you actually just be able to sight read the part that you're playing while you're going along with the video. That's actually something I've done a lot to practice conducting a score, is just having the score right up on like my TV or something, or my laptop, and just practicing my conducting, sight reading. I would also do that when I was practicing for drumline things. I would practice the snare parts while watching the score and playing to some of my favorite music, which was a lot of fun to do. And it's really enjoyable. It's a really fun thing that you get to do, to just kind of let loose a little bit. You don't have to worry about playing with the best technique in the world. Sometimes you're just frantically be like, oh shoot, I play there. Like, because sometimes the score page turns aren't the best, but but it's just a lot of fun, and it's a fun thing you can do just to relax over the summer.
Zachary, that's also a good score study technique that you don't have to just practice with those videos. You can also just read it as it is. Just, I mean, you don't even have to be trying to conduct anything. Because that, I know that's scary. Like a year or two ago, like I haven't even taken the second conducting class right now. Like that, it's terrifying to me. But like, I know that I'm going to be successful because of all of these other things that I have done in my practice. And I'm aware that these tools are out there for me. Even just like looking up those scores on YouTube, just to hear other people's parts and to see it written on the page as I'm also looking at my own part.
Yeah.
That's really helpful, that just to be a better musician, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we talked about scales. You might not necessarily want to just practice scales for fun, but also etudes, which some of them are some etude books that are well known are on IMSLP. Etudes are a really good way of practicing the fundamentals in context of a musical piece. So it's not a giant piece of repertoire. It's not a giant 8-minute solo that you're playing. It's just maybe a minute, 60 seconds to maybe 2 minutes of difficult technique and articulations and dynamic practice, and kind of putting all of these things together. And those etudes then prepare you for the bigger repertoire. In the summer, they're not necessarily the most fun. So maybe if you're looking for a challenge, then that's the way to go. But some of them are fun. I find them fun when I've been enjoying playing.
Yeah, they're certainly available to you. You know, playing the fun movie pop song repertoire isn't for everybody, obviously, but also working on heavy technique isn't for everybody. And I'm sure there's lots of things in the middle there as well. So moving on to our final strategy, or I mean, it's not really a strategy in and of itself, but it's how do you practice without instruments? I actually just did a whole video talking about that in complete detail. I gave 5 different techniques and strategies you can use to practice over the summer. And those are really good for when you're on vacation, or you're just somewhere without access to your instrument. Maybe you're a percussionist who doesn't own a marimba or a large instrument like a tuba or something like that. You don't have access to an instrument over the summer. How do I practice? Well, there's actually multiple different ways. And we talk about that in that video, but Leah, I know you wanted to say something about what is your top strategy for practicing without your instrument.
Yes, I would say that the top strategy for practicing without your instrument is to listen to the piece.
Yes, absolutely.
And you already kind of talked about this in your other videos, but listening to the piece is how we get our different interpretations. And we generally have, when we're sitting in band, I have done this so many times, and I have called myself out that I was only listening to myself. And then I went back to the recording and I heard in a specific section, wow, I am so not important right here. I am so not important. And that was a little embarrassing. I was like, I'm so glad I didn't tell anyone that. Yeah. But of course, your band director probably knows that you were like really owning it in that section during the rehearsals. And you didn't know the score. You weren't paying attention to the piece as a whole. So that's why I think listening to the pieces that you're playing just gives you a better context for the role that you should be fitting into.
All right. Well, Leah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us about these different strategies on how to practice over the summer. I think this was all very valuable information and stuff that I definitely think is very practical and easily applied to our practice. So thank you for taking the time to do this.
Good. Yeah, I hope it was helpful. I know I wish that I would have heard something like this, that someone would have told me how to practice when I was in high school, and I kind of figured it out eventually on my own. So yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for being kind.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely have to do this again.
Sounds good.
So there you have it, multiple different strategies and techniques for practicing over the summer. And please, let me know down in the comment section what you're practicing over the summer. I love to hear what you have to say. Here at this channel, I really want to help you become better musicians, students, and educators. So if you like this video where I'm talking about the strategies behind music making and want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe so that way you never miss another video. But until then, I hope you have a great week and happy practicing.